Welcome back to the Bears Talk podcast. I am Brian Perez, your host and the managing editor of bearstalk.com. And today we have an awesome guest. You know him very well. He's a friend of the show, none other than Locked On Bears host Lauren Cox. We actually have some Bears news to discuss. The Chicago Bears decided to turn this Thursday evening into a news dump with the release of veterans Eddie Jackson and Cody Whitehair. We're going to dive into that with Lauren, as well as talk about, what we got to talk about, the Justin Fields, Caleb Williams, the Kevin Warren comments about Justin Fields. And we're going to dive into what I think is the really important pick that nobody's talking about right now. The second first-round pick, the number 9 overall. Come on back. Let's have some Bears talk. Bears fans, it was a surprisingly busy Thursday. We had Cody Whitehair, Eddie Jackson, two of the longest tenured Chicago Bears, wiped off the roster. They're gone. And with them goes $21.5 million in salary cap space, or salary cap. Now there's $21.5 million more salary cap space for Ryan Poles to use in free agency. We're going to talk with Lauren Cox about that as well. Before Lauren comes in, I got to ask you guys to head over to the Bears Talks Twitter account, or X, whatever you call it now, at the Bears Talk. Make sure you follow, and also hit that subscribe, like, and follow button here on YouTube and your favorite podcast provider so we can continue to grow this show. Grassroots Bears fans, we're growing this. We're not a big media brand. We're just like you guys out there watching. So show your support and make sure you're subscribed and commenting. The more you engage with this video, the more you engage with our content on bearstalk.com, the more we grow. And speaking of engagement, make sure you put your comments in the chat section of tonight's video, because Lauren is as good as it gets when it comes to Chicago Bears experts. You're going to want to take advantage of the time that we have with him tonight. He'll answer your questions. If you feel so inclined and you want to do a super chat to get your question to the top of the list, please do so. Lauren and I will take note of it. And without further ado, let's get the man himself in here. Lauren Cox, the host of Locked On Bears, a longtime friend of the show, a longtime friend of mine. He's sporting his Dreamland barbecue shirt. I'm sporting my Senior Bowl hat. The two of us were down in Mobile, Alabama, watching some of the best prospects in the 2024 NFL draft go at it. Lauren, it feels like it was an eternity ago, but it wasn't that long ago. How have you been, my friend?
I've been doing well. I just keep wearing the shirt, hoping that they'll send me free barbecue at some point, but hasn't worked yet. But, we're trying every day.
Listen, you are a committed Dreamland fan, though. You are one of the few people I know that you live out in Wisconsin and you had barbecue from Alabama, freeze-dried and shipped to your front door. And that's, look, Dreamland's not a sponsor of this show. It'd be great if there's someone out there in Alabama is listening to this show and you want to sponsor Bears Talk, you don't have to pay us. Just send us some barbecue in the mail like you did to Lauren. Apparently, the quality remains fantastic. Is that right, Lauren?
Oh, man, the smoked sausage was phenomenal. Yes.
Listen, there's a lot of jokes that could be made about what you just said there. But anyway, I digress. Lauren, today, the news of Cody Whitehair and Eddie Jackson getting their walking papers. I mean, look at the numbers here. Eddie Jackson, 100-game veteran of the Chicago Bears. He started each and every one of those games. Cody Whitehair, he played in 124 games for the Chicago Bears, making 118 starts. You're talking about two players who combined for 218 starts over their careers. That's gone, no longer with the Chicago Bears. Your first reaction, what did you feel when you saw that the two longest tenured veterans are no more?
Yeah, both of these moves felt pretty inevitable. Like, once you started to go from end of this season mode into off season and you start to look at this roster, it's kind of like, yeah, okay, what's going to be not first order of business by any means, but when it comes to roster construction, you start looking at salaries and who's maybe on their way out. And I think there was certainly a question about whether Eddie Jackson would be back or not. But after Cody Whitehair was benched during the season last season, that was pretty much the end of Cody Whitehair's time with the team. He was going to make $12 million as a backup for the long term. And then with Eddie, it's like, okay, he's his cap hit for 2024 was 17 or 18 million dollars. And you have to ask yourself, is he playing like a 17 or 18 million dollar safety? And I wasn't sure that he would be cut, but I wondered if they could work out like a restructure or some kind of like short-term contract extension, pay cut type of arrangement where, you keep him around, but you spread out that money over a couple of years and give him some long-term stability, but maybe reduce the cap hit on the front end to kind of, make it work for the Bears to keep him around. But evidently that wasn't an option they were able to agree to or come down towards. So they just decided to cut ship. And now all of a sudden you got a big hole at free safety. And we already knew they had a hole at center, but that's two key positions Ryan Poles is going to need to address this offseason.
And when you talk about Ryan Poles having to address that position specifically, and even center, obviously, what do you think is more likely? Do you see high draft capital being invested in one or both of those positions? Or do you think he's going to throw some of this astronomical cap space he now has at his disposal? The Bears are now at, according to SpotTrack, the most recent numbers I looked up before the show today, $70 million in salary cap space entering free agency. That ranks third in the NFL, behind only the Tennessee Titans, who are second at $73 million, and the Washington Commanders at $83.5 million. If anybody in the chat, if those numbers are wrong, drop it in the chat and audit us in real time. But bottom line is the Bears have even more money to spend now than they had just a few hours ago. So do you think he's going to take these resources, go all in on a guy like Antoine Winfield Jr.? Do you think he's going to go all in on a veteran center? Or do you think those are positions that he'll prioritize in the NFL draft?
I think neither, only in the sense that I have a feeling, the top centers on the market, Antoine Winfield, probably Kyle Duggar as well, are likely to get franchise tags from their respective teams because they don't have a lot else to really go after in franchise tags. So I don't know that a big money safety is going to hit the free agent market, that there's really a guy to go all in on. I certainly point to Julian Blackman from the Indianapolis Colts as a guy that Matt Eberflus drafted at Indianapolis, is hitting the free agent market. He's dealt with injuries every year, and I don't know that he's going to be a high-priced, big splash free agent, but some familiarity there. And I think similar thing for center, where it's like maybe Connor Williams gets franchise tagged by the Dolphins, and even if he doesn't, like, centers are not big-time expensive free agent players. But I do think the Bears will want to prioritize experience at both of those positions. At safety, we heard Ryan Poles talk at the season-ending press conference about how, like, he was asked about Eddie Jackson, and very telling, he's like, yeah, Eddie Jackson didn't have the best year on the field, but where his value to us was, the communication and the leadership on the back end for all those young guys with Brisker and Gordon and Stevenson, et cetera. And I think that's a signal that, yes, he was telling you Eddie Jackson's play wasn't good enough and he was probably going to be gone, but also that they like having, especially that free safety position, an experienced veteran player to kind of lead from behind there and lead that position group. I think someone like Blackman could come in with that experience. And same kind of thing at center, where assuming you're going to draft Caleb Williams with the number 1 overall pick and trade away Justin Fields, I would prefer to have a veteran center in front of that quarterback as opposed to drafting someone in likely the 3rd round to have a rookie center, rookie quarterback combination. I mean, as much as they could develop together, I want Caleb Williams to have veteran established center in front of him. So there's no question, bringing that along or dealing with ups and downs up front. Like, solidify that group and put your quarterback in the best position to succeed.
I think you're right. And I think when you look at how the NFL draft, at least as of today, what we know the Bears have in their draft arsenal right now, the 2nd round is kind of the sweet spot for the safeties and the centers, the interior offensive linemen. You start sliding into the 3rd round, sure, you could find some value at center to potentially rise as a starter in the rookie year. Safety, it might get a little bit more difficult. I mean, look at the Bears. They grabbed Jaquan Brisker in the 2nd round a couple of years ago. That's kind of the sweet spot. They don't have a 2nd round pick right now. Maybe they'll get one if they trade Justin Fields. We're going to dive into that in a few minutes. But if they don't get that 2nd round pick, even if for one reason or another, a Justin Fields trade turns into a late 1st rounder or some kind of 1st round package, I don't see how they can address starters, a starter at safety or a starter at center in the NFL draft with the draft picks that they currently have. So I think this was a sign that the Chicago Bears are basically looking at their pro scouting board, right? Because at this time of year, we all get caught up in the NFL draft meetings and the draft board, but these teams also have their big board for free agency. And the Bears might be looking at center and safety as 2 of the stronger positions that are going to be available in unrestricted free agency. They're comfortable making this move right now. And if you think about it too, Lauren, it's kind of a hat tip to 2 experienced veteran guys. Let them get a head start in the free agent market, maybe because the Bears in their advanced pro scouting know this is going to be a competitive center and safety free agent market. We're going to be able to get an upgrade from these guys on the open market. We're not going to have to use the draft. Let's let them get a head start because they're not going to be the best at their positions in free agency. They could struggle to find a job if the Bears wait until, for whatever reason, later in the offseason to cut them. So I definitely think free agency, Ryan Poles just gave us two massive breadcrumbs in terms of what the team's potential free agent strategy is going to be, free agency strategy is going to be over the next couple of weeks. But what we're all trying to figure out, Lauren, is what's going to happen in the 2024 NFL draft. Everybody is searching for the breadcrumbs, the magic answer, shaking the magic 8 balls, looking in the crystal ball, going to fortune tellers and tarot card readers, trying to determine what is Ryan Poles going to do at the number 1 overall pick. So when you have the Chicago Bears CEO and president, Kevin Warren, sitting down with Jarrett Payton from WGN and saying the following: Justin has a rare combination of intelligence, of size, of strength, and speed. You forget how big of a man he is until you're up on him. He's not a small man. I just think every year he's going to continually get better. I'm glad Justin Fields is on the Chicago Bears. Lauren, that is like going into the Mad Max Thunderdome that's burning down with anarchists everywhere and pouring gasoline on the fire and just lighting it ablaze. Tell me, when you first heard this quote, what was your immediate takeaways? What is Kevin Warren telling the army of Bears fans who are watching and listening to this, at home, on YouTube, in their car, driving to work? What was Kevin Warren telling all of us?
My immediate reaction was, boy, I think a lot of people are going to overreact to this and try and squeeze way too much out of this and make definitive statements that, Kevin Warren is putting his foot down and wants the Bears to keep Justin Fields. I don't think that's actually what he said, but I've already seen that as the takeaway for some people. Like, this is a clear endorsement of building around Fields and trading down from the number 1 overall pick, because he talked about the kind of haul they got last year. And if they can do similar things with their draft capital this season, they can really add impact players to their team. But like, none of that was him saying we should keep Justin Fields and trade down from the number 1 overall pick. It was him saying, like, I like Justin Fields a lot and he's a very good player, and I'm glad he's on our team, whether he's going to be on the team long-term or short-term. Glad he's here as an asset to this franchise. And also, the Bears had a great opportunity to add a bunch of talent last season, and we should try and add a bunch of talent this offseason. Like, I think those are all true and real statements. And bigger picture for me, this seems to be following a pattern right now, that the Bears are in this trickle of getting information out there through a lot of different sources, right? Right before the Super Bowl and over the Super Bowl weekend, we get Adam Schefter saying that, Mike Tomlin is a big fan of Justin Fields. And we get Adam Schefter saying the Bears have had these conversations about keeping Justin Fields. And we get these conversations from NFL Network. It's like, it would take a historic haul to move them down the number 1 overall pick, but they'll listen. And now we get Kevin Warren choosing to sit down for an interview with a Chicago TV station that he knows a lot of eyeballs and ears are going to be on what he says, and puts out a specific message to the rest of the NFL. Like, I think this is kind of all part of an intentional sort of messaging the Bears are putting out. Like, listen, we want to make the NFL, we want to make it clear that, like, we can squeeze as much Justin Fields value as we can out of this and really control our own destiny and say, listen, come give us your best offer, but we really like Justin Fields, but also come give us our best offer, and we're open to everything. But I still think it doesn't change Ryan Poles' plan of draft Caleb Williams and move on from the veteran quarterback.
I want to agree with you, Lauren. I want to agree with you that this is part of some magic formula that Ryan Poles and Kevin Warren and Ian Cunningham have created in some secret room in Hallis Hall. But I wonder if there is a little bit of Kevin Warren, the ultimate politician, Kevin Warren, the PR wizard, just understanding when he's talked. Every time Kevin Warren has talked about the Chicago Bears, he talks about essentially making everyone feel good inside Hallis Hall, right? He wants everybody to understand that they're important, that they're valued. He has one-on-one meetings with every staffer inside Hallis Hall, no matter what the job is, no matter what the role is. So this doesn't surprise me that if he's talking about any employee of the Chicago Bears, which is Justin Fields is arguably the most recognizable employee of the Chicago Bears right now, There is no way that Kevin Warren, the guy that we have gotten to know over the last several months, who and everything and every way he's talked about this team, there's no way that guy would say anything but positive things about Justin Fields. And I don't know if he's I don't want to say he's not capable of playing the smoke screen, of playing that poker draft game. I just think he truly is like always going to bleed navy, blue, and orange. And whoever the quarterback is of the Bears, whoever the GM is of the Bears, whoever the head coach is of the Bears, he in a public facing fashion is going to be very positive. I mean, when he says something like you forget how big of a man he is until you're up on him. I mean, to me, it's a strange way of like endorsing a quarterback. If you're basically saying, I didn't realize how big of a dude he was. That to me is an odd approach, an odd sales pitch to other teams in terms of we like him so much because he's a big dude. I just think Kevin Warren was being politically correct in that interview. He was, basically singing the praises of one of the Chicago Bears employees, knowing essentially that like the next guy who comes in, or if Justin Fields leaves, he'll be able to say, this has nothing to do with Justin Fields. I've said all these wonderful things about Justin Fields up to this point. The Bears just had an opportunity to get better with this decision that we're making. So, Justin, look, we love you so much, as I've said all offseason, but no hard feelings. We just have to move on. I think in a way, it's Kevin Warren just trying to set up something that is a little more politics than sincere evaluation of Fields. And I don't know if Kevin Warren is capable of kind of upselling Justin Fields on the trade market. I don't think the Bears are capable of doing that right now. I mean, let's be honest. Like, what can the Bears really? If you're in a GM of a quarterback needy team and you're interested in trading for Justin Fields, do you really care what the Bears are saying in the media right now? The Bears have a decision to make at quarterback. They're not going to make that decision based on what you offer them. I'm a firm believer, Lauren. The Bears are going to decide who they think is the better quarterback for this team that can win a Super Bowl sooner for this team. And that's going to be based on talent evaluation. Which quarterback is a better quarterback? Not which quarterback plus trade offer is a better outcome for the Bears. They're going to decide which quarterback gets them to a Super Bowl faster. And once that decision's made, whatever's left over is what they trade. If it's Justin Fields is the better quarterback, the number one pick gets traded. If it's Caleb Williams is the better quarterback, Justin Fields gets traded. So it's not like an opposing team doesn't know that either. Do you think, unless I'm totally wrong, I mean, do you think the Bears could say to themselves, we're rolling with Justin Fields. We believe he is the better quarterback. And then they change that opinion because the Pittsburgh Steelers offer him 2 first-round picks, and now they're fine with Caleb Williams?
No, they're going to make that quarterback decision independent of that. And I don't necessarily think that they have, great power to affect Justin Fields' trade value via public comments, but every team seems to think they do. We get this every year with every potential available player via trade. Stuff gets leaked from one side or the other to try and play up the public perception one way or the other, or play down the public perception one way or the other of this player that's available. And it probably doesn't end up having a huge effect, but it does put some of this pressure, at least publicly, on other teams. If over here you build up this idea that Justin Fields is still a very good quarterback that the Bears quite like, and to your point, like, and they still draft Caleb and can say, we really like Justin, we just had this better opportunity. Like, that puts that other franchises and other fan bases see that and go, man, there's a good quarterback in Chicago, we should go get them. And that's pressure on each of those teams to say, like, we got to go get that quarterback. And maybe we feel like that, this quarterback can help sell tickets and be an exciting thing for a franchise. And you get meddling owners that fall in love with these ideas because they heard it in the media, and then they push their general manager to go trade for the guy. Like, you never know how those little things can kind of create the right pressure and trickle in some different directions. I just end up feeling like, why did Kevin Warren sit down and do this interview right around the Super Bowl? Like, why now? We haven't heard from Kevin Warren since that press conference. We rarely ever hear Kevin Warren. Doesn't just sit down and do TV interviews all the time. So why now? And I think some of it could be stadium related and wanting to get ahead of the Arlington Heights tax news that Arlington Heights wasn't going to provide any tax benefits, and maybe getting ahead of that as a PR spin. But I also think he knows that whatever he says about Justin Fields is going to be run with pretty across the mediascape. So he can play the game a little bit too and play things up on their end.
How much of an influence do you think Kevin Warren's opinion will have on Ryan Poles? Do you think he's going to have any voice in that room related to? I know that everybody's sharing what McCaskey said, and Ryan Poles is 100% in control of all final decisions that come related to football, and of course, that's hopefully what the general manager is supposed to do. But everybody's been in a room with their boss before, and even if your job title says this is your department, this is your decision, this is what you do, if the owner of the business or the president of the company is in the same room as you and they have an opinion, sometimes it could change your opinion. How much do you think Kevin Warren will ultimately speak up in these draft meetings or in that think tank if a trade offer is made for the number one pick or a trade offer is made for Justin Fields? What do you think Kevin Warren's role or influence will be?
Yeah, I mean, that's always the fear, right? That someone who maybe, I mean, as much as we respect Kevin Warren as a businessman, as a speaker and everything, like he's not a trained football evaluator in that sense. And to his credit, like he's been very forthcoming about that. And that's what kind of alleviates the fear. But the fear is like someone who's not an actual scout or evaluator will then be, meddling in these decisions and start to influence what the general manager does, even though Kevin's not, breaking down Caleb Williams tape, at least to the level and quality that, actual NFL general managers and scouting executives are able to do. But Kevin Warren has said, like, I'm not a football evaluator. I understand that, and I'm going to leave the football evaluation up to these guys. Yet at the same time, I'm going to contribute in any way that I can, and in any, if I can help in some consideration about X, Y, or Z, and something I've dealt with before in my time with the Minnesota Vikings or the time the St. Louis Rams or as Big Ten commissioner. Like if he can provide some assistance, he's going to, and I think he can be a sounding board for Ryan Poles, certainly just as someone who's been around decision makers before. But I kind of get the impression that he's not going to totally move the needle, but he's going to be there as a support. And everything I've heard about Kevin Warren from people around, around him and around the organization is that like, he's very much a listener. He wants to take in a lot of information and try and synthesize it from a lot of sources and then can share that with Ryan Poles, but isn't necessarily someone who's going to come in and think his way is for sure the best way. And we got to do it because this is what I think. It's more like, here's kind of what he's gathering and what I'm thinking about everything. And then kind of move forward from there and offer that perspective to Ryan Poles, but Poles can still kind of sit there and go, no, well, I'm the GM and I think this, and then Ian Cunningham thinks this and Matt Eberflus thinks this. So as we all kind of work through this together, you can kind of come to a conclusion that Kevin Warren can also then get on board with.
One thing we've noticed on social media, Lauren, is that Caleb Williams pays attention, right? Caleb Williams is actively liking tweets or whatever you call them now on X. He's paying attention to the narrative that's forming around Chicago and the quarterback conversation. So what do you think comments like this from Kevin Warren do to a guy like Caleb Williams, who, I mean, he's got no say in where he goes, no matter what fans want to think, no matter what his father even says. Caleb Williams, if Chicago wants to take him, he's going to be a Bear. But like, what does this mean for a kid like that who is seeing a team president in a way endorsing the quarterback, even though I don't think it's a public endorsement? You might not think it's necessarily a public endorsement. Quarterbacks have egos, man. Kids that are going to be the first overall pick in the NFL draft, they have egos, and it's part of why they got to this point. Part of why you get to be the first overall pick in any sports draft is because you think you are the best at what you do. And guess what? Throughout your collegiate career, you've kind of proven you are. A kid like Caleb Williams sees Kevin Warren talking about Justin Fields. I'm glad he's on the Chicago Bears. You don't basically realize how good this man is. He's going to keep getting better. We already hear Jaquan Brisker and DJ Moore publicly advocating for Justin Fields. I mean, how much of this noise do you think can circulate before Caleb Williams says, you know what? If you all like Justin Fields that much, don't draft me. I mean, at some point, he's human. He could end up saying, I've heard enough of this. Like, everybody's banging the door down for Justin Fields. I don't want to go to Chicago now because I'm going to feel so unwanted and unwelcome. At what point do you think this flips from players in the locker room doing right by Justin Fields to, you know what? Now you're kind of damaging. You're almost tarnishing this Caleb Williams entry point if he becomes a Bear, to where he now feels like he has to overcompensate and prove too much to the team president and everybody in the locker room that you made the right choice by picking me. Do you think we're kind of getting dangerously close to that right now?
I don't think we're there yet, but I think it kind of just depends on how long it takes for them to draft or to trade Justin Fields, right? Like if we get to draft day and Justin Fields is still on the roster because Ryan Poles is kind of waiting for the quarterback dominoes to fall a little bit and say which team, if you get through free agency and, a couple teams are still waiting to get to the draft for their quarterbacks and then wait for the team that doesn't get the quarterback they want in the draft. And then, trade for their second round pick before the start of the second round. I mean, we don't know exactly what the timeline's going to be here, but if they play this out and it's draft day and they draft Caleb Williams and still the plan is to trade Justin Fields, but they haven't yet, then I think you're really in that danger of like the guys literally crossing each other in the hallways and that being, awkward. I mean, not even just physically, but like metaphorically with the team as well. Like one is literally on the way out while the other one is coming in. That's where you start to really get into some of that trouble. But if we get to, we get through the NFL scouting combine and then sometime between that and the start of free agency in mid-March, Justin Fields gets traded, kind of along the same timeline of the number one overall pick being traded last year. Then you've got all of free agency and then like all the rest of March and all the rest of April for everyone to clearly know the Bears trade away Justin Fields. They're for sure drafting Caleb Williams number one overall. This is going to be Caleb Williams' team. You'll hear the Bears kind of publicly talk about when they get these free agent players. Like, I don't know if they can publicly say they're going to draft Caleb, but obviously they'll be preparing for the next quarterback. And everyone will just be talking about, oh, look at how Caleb's going to fit in with these players, with the signings they just made and everything else. So it all depends on how quickly they move on from Justin Fields. And I think the sooner the better for this in that regard. But I also think if I'm Caleb Williams, I should look at Kevin Warren endorsing Justin Fields and go, wow, this organization is really loyal to their players and really loyal to their quarterbacks. And I want to be a part of an organization that's really loyal that way. And if they really love this Justin Fields guy, I want to come in and outwork him and outcompete him and prove them wrong that I'm the better one than Justin Fields. And that while they love this guy and I'm sure he's great, I'm better. And my ego is going to go in there and prove to you all that you're going to love me even more than you loved that guy.
So, Lauren, I love the thought of that. But that's like Tyson Bagent has to think that way, right? Caleb Williams needs to walk into his or whatever team drafts Caleb Williams number one overall. It's got to be like the royal procession. The red carpet is rolled out for this guy. You are the chosen one. You don't need to prove anything to anyone because we just picked you number one overall. We handpicked you over the guy we had. You don't have to prove anything. You are the dude that we think can bring us to the promised land. That's why you're the number one pick in the draft. If you're a second round quarterback, if you're a fifth round quarterback, if you're an undrafted rookie from a small school, you need to outwork everybody. You need to prove that you belong. You need to prove that you can be a starter. For Caleb Williams to have to come into a situation in Chicago where he has to basically make everyone buy into him, and he's the first overall pick. To me, that is setting up a dude who is a little bit quirky with his personality, right? We've seen some things about Caleb Williams that perhaps on the mainstream media here, people are questioning whether or not he has the fundamental mental makeup to handle a city like Chicago sports media and just all that comes with the celebrity of being a Bears starting quarterback. I mean, think about something. You're talking about trying to be the guy, like you're not only coming into Chicago trying to break the quarterback curse. You need to try to be the first player to ever throw for 4,000 yards on the Chicago Bears. And not only that, but you have to prove that the guy you just replaced, you should have been the replacement. You deserve to be the number one pick. I mean, you're coming in trying to break one of the longest curses at one of the most important positions in all of sport. You don't need to worry about the guy you just replaced. You're not coming in replacing. It's not like Steve Young replacing Joe Montana, right? Like you're replacing a legend who won Super Bowls here. You're not replacing a guy who has proven time and time again that you are the dude. Like, when I don't know, think of other quarterbacks in the past that have done. I'm drawing a blank here, but like the guy that replaced John Elway, the guy that replaced Dan Marino, or the quarterback like Mac Jones replacing Tom Brady. I mean, that is a dude that has something to prove. Replacing Justin Fields, we all love Justin Fields, Lauren. I love the dude. I fell to my knees when the Bears drafted him. I thought he was going to be the savior. It hasn't worked to that level. We've had some beautiful moments with Justin Fields, some magic with Justin Fields, but he is a very replaceable quarterback right now, especially when you talk about replacing him with a player who has a chance to in year one, break every single season passing record the Bears have ever had because of his natural talent. So to me, if you're drafting Caleb Williams number 1 overall, the last thing you want to do is have this guy come into Chicago having to earn the respect of fans and teammates, not just the normal earn the respect as a rookie needs to do, but like, I promise you, I'm better than Justin Fields. That is a horrible way to start somebody's career. And I just have this bad feeling. I have this bad feeling that that's going to start the Caleb Williams era off on such a bad foot. Like, remember when Mitch Trubisky was booed at a Bears game, at a Bulls game? I feel like we're steamrolling into something like that with Caleb Williams. I don't know if Caleb Williams is going to handle it as well as Mitch Trubisky did. But now, Lauren, I'm going to put you on the spot. It's the number 1 pick is on the clock. Justin Fields is still on the roster. You have offers for Justin Fields. You have offers for Caleb Williams. And you are now at the point where all the trade offers, everything looks great. Even trade for Justin Fields, great trade for Caleb Williams. You make out on both deals. You don't benefit one over the other better than the opposite, okay? It just comes down to now your gut. You're the general manager of the Chicago Bears. Who is the quarterback in 2024?
It's Caleb Williams. You have to take your shot at something great. You have to take your shot at getting that quarterback that you think has a decent chance to potentially be the game-changing playmaking quarterback that truly takes over. That is the not doesn't need to be specifically Patrick Mahomes, but is in that caliber of Joe Burrow, Josh Allen, Patrick Mahomes, like upper echelon quarterbacks where you always feel like you're in the game. And not that Caleb Williams is guaranteed to be any of those things, but we've seen now through 3 seasons of Justin Fields, I still think Fields can be a starting caliber NFL quarterback down the line and continue to, have a long career in the NFL. But I think we've seen at this point, like that Justin is not going to be that. Like he can be something good, maybe even very good, but he's not going to be the total difference maker, take over a game late in the fourth quarter and carry your team to victory and be the long-term unquestioned face of your franchise. We don't know that Caleb Williams will be that, but he's the best chance you have at that. And you need to exhaust any and all options to get your best chance at that kind of a difference maker at quarterback. It's worth moving on from someone like Justin Fields to get somebody like Caleb that you just, even if it's you say it's a 60 or a 70% chance that Caleb Williams could be a Mahomes, Burrow, Allen caliber quarterback. Like, I will take that because I think it's a much higher chance than what you've got right now with Justin Fields. And it's not like you have to like give up extra assets to get Caleb Williams, right? We're not talking about trading up to number 1 to get Caleb, but we're talking about just taking what's already right in front of you and then still being able to build around Caleb. And sure, maybe it's slightly less resources than you'd have to build around Justin, but eventually there's no cost of draft picks and trade compensation that are worth passing on or giving up the opportunity to get a quarterback that can get you into that upper echelon.
So after I asked you that question, there was literally no hesitation from you. Now, has there been a moment since the Bears secured the number 1 pick and it was, the Caleb Williams momentum just really began to swell? Was there any point this offseason where you really weren't sure in terms of what route you would go? Or has it been, I don't want to say Team Caleb because it's like we're buying into the social media Bears civil war here, but has it been Caleb for you from the beginning, wire to wire here?
I guess define Caleb, I guess, because I think from the beginning it's been trade Justin Fields and acquire a quarterback in this draft, and then it's a process of making sure you feel like Caleb Williams is head and shoulders above Drake May and Jaden Daniels and the other quarterbacks in here. But I do think the writing was on the wall this season that the end was coming for Justin Fields in Chicago. That really, when he went down with that thumb injury, was when the first kind of moment where it's like, I feel like this might be the end here, because this last season was all about proving that he would take that next step. And he certainly got better and was improved. But even over the final stretch of the season where he played maybe his best football of the season, like it still never quite got really where it needed to be to say, yes, for sure, got to stick with this guy. No doubt he's the guy. Like, I needed to see that. It didn't mean I needed to see 10 wins. Didn't mean I needed to see 4,000 yards. Like, it's not about a specific number, but it's about watching the quarterback and thinking, Yes, beyond a doubt. Like, sure, he's got flaws, but like, he's the guy. I don't have any questions. I think he is for sure going to be the guy. And he wasn't all season able to really do that for me. And so then you go into the offseason saying, oh, you got the number 1 overall pick, and Fields hasn't really been able to prove himself. I'm for sure taking a quarterback there. And then it was a question of like, okay, is it Caleb? Is it Drake? Is it Drake May? Is it Jayden Daniels? And then also weighing like, is it Caleb at 1 or trading to 2 and still taking a Drake May? Like, what's the difference between Caleb or Jayden Daniels if it's Caleb versus Daniels and an extra first-round pick? Like, how close are these prospects in your mind? And to me, Caleb is still worth not even moving down and taking one of the other quarterbacks. Like, he's head and shoulders above the rest of the class for me.
And see, I think that's what I think Bears fans have to pay so much attention to, Lauren. I think you backed into a sub point there that is like, you're even considering, not you specifically, but Bears fans who went through the exact same exercise that you just did. You're kind of saying like, maybe I would take Justin Fields, Drake May over Justin Fields. Maybe I would take Jayden Daniels over Justin Fields, not just Caleb Williams over Justin Fields. Like, there's a conversation to be had that Justin Fields is the 4th best quarterback if he was in this draft. Now, I don't think so, right? I don't think Jayden Daniels would be a better pro than Justin Fields, but there is an absolute possibility that Drake May will be a better NFL quarterback than Justin Fields has been up to this point. So if that's the case, like, what is this conversation even about? It starts to feel like it is, I've planted my flag in this spot, and I am so deep and entrenched in this argument, I can't move off of it. I have to die on this hill, whether it's Caleb Williams or Justin Fields. I'm here to tell Bears fans just a simple life lesson, right? Be bendy. Evolve and adapt. It's the Bruce Lee willow tree philosophy. Willow trees are the strongest trees in the world. Why? Because their branches bend with snow and wind and rain. You don't have to be so rigid in a certain position that ultimately you end up snapping and breaking. If you are a Justin Fields fan, that's great. And if you want Justin Fields to be the starting quarterback of the Chicago Bears in 2024, you are entitled to that opinion. And I love hearing logical, well-reasoned arguments as to why. If you are a Caleb Williams supporter and you are excited that the Bears have a chance to draft this kid who you think might be a generational quarterback, that is a fantastic, logical, reasonable position to take, and I want to hear it. There's no reason to yell at each other from across the virtual universe and try to establish that you're right and the other guy's wrong, because there's a chance. There's a better than zero chance that you will be wrong, right? And here's the other point, Lauren. Everybody might be right. Justin Fields might go on to have a great career for the Atlanta Falcons, win the NFC South 5 times, make deep runs to the playoffs, including an NFC championship or even a Super Bowl appearance. And Caleb Williams might come to Chicago and win 2 Super Bowls and rewrite the entire history of this team. And then everybody's right. It doesn't really matter. So one of the most important things that I want to get across, and Lauren, you and I talked about this down in Mobile, was that we need to understand, Bears fans, you are in, like, we have thread the needle right now in terms of the perfect offseason. The Bears have the number 1 pick in a year with the best quarterback that's come out in years, and they have a ton of free agency money to spend, and they have the number 9 pick, which we're going to transition into now with a great question from Carrie. Thank you, Carrie, for the super chat. We really appreciate it. We'll get into this in a minute. Appreciate this moment, Bears fans. Do not let the 2024 offseason be drowned in arguments and anger and just this ruthless approach to fandom. The Bears have a chance to get the best quarterback that has come out, in my opinion, since Andrew Luck. I think he's better than Trevor Lawrence, okay? The Bears have a chance to sign some pretty damn good edge rushers and offensive linemen and even wide receivers in free agency. It's going to be a lot of fun. Embrace it and enjoy it. try not to engage in the garbage arguments. Now, let's move on, Lauren, right? Because I could talk about this for the entire night. But Carrie put a great question here, and we do appreciate it. And you know what? The tape never lies. Those guys, they're A++. I love going on their show. It's one of the few times, and Lauren knows those guys really well too.
Yeah.
You can go on the tape never lies as a guest and be on there for literally like 2.5 hours, and it feels like it's 15 minutes. Those guys are true to the core Bears fans who not only do they speak from the heart, but they also speak from the brain because they do the work. Great evaluators of talent, logical dudes. So highly recommend if you, for some reason, you're here and you've never gone there, you need to go there and check out their show. Carrie asked, what are our thoughts on the 9th pick? Would you trade down if Adunze or Neighbors are available or draft one? Lauren, you're up.
It's a hard question to answer on February 15th, because it depends on what they do in free agency. Because I think with that 9th overall pick, I'm either drafting a wide receiver, drafting an edge rusher, or probably trading down. And I can throw Brock Bowers into the wide receiver conversation there. I know we will get into that, I think, in a little bit here. But like, I'm drafting a pass catcher. How about that? A pass catcher and edge rusher, or I'm trading down. But it kind of depends on what they're able to get in free agency. I think there's a lot of really good, number 2, number 3 type receivers that'll hit the market in free agency that they could go out and sign a guy or two and fill out the receiver depth pretty good. And I'd feel a lot more comfortable passing on Adunze or Neighbors, as much as I think they're both really good receivers. Especially, I think I'd prefer Neighbors out of the two of them and would love to see either one in Chicago. But I just as much would love to see an edge rusher like a Latu and even Jared Verse from Florida State. Like, those guys would both be great picks with the number 9 spot. And I go back and forth on like what I would value more between the two of them. And I think the NFL is kind of showing you they're paying both positions about the same amount in free agency. Like, there's a similar value there. But I can't help but look at the Kansas City Chiefs in the Super Bowl, and also, I hate to say it, but the Green Bay Packers, where scheme seems to be a little bit more important than receiver talent, right? That Patrick Mahomes is throwing touchdowns to, obviously having a quarterback that's elite is great for the Kansas City Chiefs, but he's throwing touchdown passes to Marquez Valdez-Scantling and Justin Watson's a big part of that offense. And in Green Bay, Jordan Love was throwing to a bunch of 3rd and 4th and 5th round wide receivers, a couple seconds in there too. But like, these teams don't have top 10 picks at wide receiver, and you can still have a really productive passing offense if you have a good quarterback, which the Bears in theory would get with Caleb Williams. And if you have like really good scheming and play calling, like receivers absolutely matter. I'm not saying you don't need any good receivers, but like, you can scheme up receivers to get open a little bit easier than you can scheme up pass rushers to win one-on-one all the time. Like, yeah, you can generate sim pressures and different draws, and you can blitz, of course, and draw different things up. But like, having a pass rusher that you can just let loose one-on-one is also really freaking important. And so like, if both positions are addressed similarly in free agency, I would lean edge rusher with the 9th overall pick. But also, if a team is desperate for a quarterback to get up to 9, it'll give me a future first or whatever, I'm not totally opposed to moving down. I feel like Caleb is my big fish. I'll get my quarterback squared away, and then if I have to move down and miss out on another top 10 talent, I'm not totally horrified by it.
What gets me really worried about everything you just said, Lauren, is when you talk about scheming wide receivers open, and maybe you can give some examples of quarterbacks who have had success without that elite receiver. I think you may have just set the table for Jordan Love being an elite quarterback, because only guys I can remember that have really outplayed their receivers in recent years, you got Patrick Mahomes. Jordan Love did it last year. Tom Brady in New England won Super Bowls with wide receivers who were very pedestrian. The list of elite quarterbacks who have succeeded without that number 1 true wide receiver is a short one. So I really think that this, for Bears fans, Lauren might have just given you a nightmare fuel that Jordan Love could be in that category. Because if you think about the players that he succeeded with, that would have been the kind of receiving core that we would have used as excuses for the pre-Mitch Trubisky days with Kendall Wright and all those guys, and Justin Fields before DJ Moore. If those receivers were on the Bears, we would have used that as the reason why the quarterback failed. Jordan Love was able to go beyond that, rise above that. True, some really good scheming too from Green Bay, but I think you're actually giving Jordan Love more props than establishing that wide receiver isn't really that important. Because, not that you said it's not important, I don't want to put words in your mouth, but I do believe that you need that guy on the outside. The Bears have him in DJ Moore. And if I'm at the number 9 pick and Malik Neighbors is on the board, I am doing everything I can to get up to the commissioner as fast as possible and handing that card in. I did a scouting report on bearstalk.com of Malik Neighbors recently. And let me tell you something, Lauren. You know, I've been doing this a long time. I like to think I have a pretty good eye for talent. Malik Neighbors has some special qualities. I would be hesitant to draft Marvin Harrison Jr. over him. I know that's going to be crazy. But in the NFL, in today's NFL game, if you talk about 10 years ago, Marvin Harrison Jr., no doubt about it, a more physical defensive game, coverage was more physical. The rules tended to favor the defenders. Today's game, the space, the ability for wide receivers to dart off the line of scrimmage, almost like the CFL where you have a head start, where guys can't even touch these dudes in the defensive backfield. Malik Neighbors reminds me a little bit of Tyreek Hill in him, and he's a bigger dude. You watch Malik Neighbors release at the line of scrimmage, one step, full speed, and he blows by defensive backs in the SEC and every conference in the country. Malik Neighbors would be the perfect complement to DJ Moore. And if the Bears did draft Caleb Williams, who is the home run ball king, who looks touchdown to check down, Malik Neighbors would be an instant star in Chicago. So if he's on the board, no doubt about it. Huge mistake if the Bears didn't take him. I believe he won't be. I think he's going to go ahead of Rome Odunze. I don't think there's any chance Neighbors makes it to 9. If those two receivers are gone, the next guy I would consider, Lauren, is Brock Bowers at number 9, even over the edge rushers, because Brock Bowers might be the 4th best pass catcher in this draft, even though he doesn't play wide receiver. We're going to talk about him in a minute. I want to bring up this other super chat from Frank. Frank, we really appreciate it. Ryan Poles has shown that he can draft well. What are the chances he trades? I'm assuming he's talking about Jaylen Johnson for a 2nd and 4th rounder in this draft. By the way, I would love to see you guys paired together on a weekly basis. You know what, Frank? I would love Lauren to be here on a weekly basis too, but you got to pay the big fish to get him to play in the pond every now and then. And Lauren's a big fish in the podcast business. A little tough to get his time. So how about this? All of you guys and gals out there, Bears fans who are watching this, who like Lauren, bombard him on Twitter. Tell him to keep coming down here. Me and Lauren have a good chemistry. I want him on as much as possible. He has an open invitation, Frank. So any show that he's not on, blame him, not me. Lauren, why don't you go after Frank's question here? Do you think Jaylen Johnson is a trade candidate for a 2nd and 4th this year?
So not this year, right? So I'm pretty sure, I'm pretty confident the Bears are going to end up franchise tagging Jaylen Johnson. I don't think they're going to reach a long-term extension before the start of free agency and before the end of the franchise tag window, and that they'll ultimately end up franchise tagging him. And then that will extend the time that they have to negotiate with him. And I think that will go beyond the draft. And then I wouldn't rule out the possibility of, like, there's a deadline in, was it like June or July, when you can't really like trade and extend franchise tag players anymore. And like, I can't rule out the possibility that the negotiations just never come together and they ultimately sometime down the line still trade Jaylen Johnson, because we've already seen that negotiation fall apart and Jaylen Johnson requested a trade. Like, we have evidence of this already. And so that could happen again, but I don't think it will happen before draft day this year. And so, like, I don't think they can get a 2nd and 4th for him in this upcoming draft. But if you get past the draft, we get to OTAs and Jaylen Johnson's holding out, and eventually Ryan Poles says, listen, we've got all these young cornerbacks anyway. Let's trade Jaylen Johnson. Maybe they could get, a future 2nd round, for 2025 draft. I could still see them potentially getting draft pick there, but I don't think the Jaylen Johnson situation will resolve in time to make him a trade for draft picks in this year.
And, it's kind of like the Caleb analogy for me, or the Caleb Williams example. At some point, you got to just keep talent. You got to bring the guys in. You can't keep trading the number 1 for more picks. You got to use it, right? You got to use the first pick when you got a chance to get the quarterback. You didn't do it last year with C.J. Stroud. No one's blaming Ryan Poles for that. Nobody had C.J. Stroud there. But at some point, you got to use the pick. You can't keep trading it for more picks and the hope that maybe you get more pick. I mean, you need players on the field to win a game. And with Jaylen Johnson, I mean, if you get a second and fourth round pick for him, you're kind of hoping that you get the next Jaylen Johnson in the second round. So, like, just pay the guy you got already. You hit on Tyreek Stevenson last year. You hit on Kyler Gordon the year before. You kind of already invested those picks in that position. You've got those guys on the roster. Pay Jaylen Johnson. It's also about sending a message to the locker room. If you just keep flipping veterans into draft picks, don't pay these guys any big money deals, homegrown guys, big money deals, I think it's a bad message. I don't think a second and fourth round pick comes close to the value of what Jaylen Johnson brings to that defense. And Jaylen Johnson played like one of the best cornerbacks in the NFL. And when you play like that, you got to get paid like that. And the Bears have the money. There's no excuse. Have the money. He's a young cornerback. He proved he can make plays on the ball this year. He stuffed the stat sheet with interceptions. He really gelled in Matt Eberflus's defense over the second half of the season. Just pay the man. It's just that, they say pigs get fat, hogs get slaughtered. The more picks you try to acquire by trading a good veteran, by trading the number one pick, you're becoming a hog on draft weekend, and you're going to get slaughtered. The team's going to get slaughtered. Eventually, you're not going to have the premier talent that you need on the roster to win games. And circling back to the number 9 pick, Lauren, in terms of a premier talent, on Bears Talk for our premium Bears talkers. You can sign up for a premium subscription. It's really cheap. It's like less than a cup of coffee a month. I posted a Brock Bowers scouting report today. I went into this evaluation with an open mind, Lauren, because I don't value traditionally tight ends as like a top 10 position. Kyle Pitts, I was a little bit, not that I was lower on him than most people in that draft class, but I saw a player who was like this physical freak in terms of size, length, tested well at the combine, but I never thought he played as fast as he looked in a t-shirt and shorts. I never thought he looked that way on a football field. So I'm not totally surprised that he hasn't blown up in the league. Great rookie year, but it's kind of like maybe the offensive coordinator, maybe it's Arthur Smith, maybe whatever it might be. We'll see this year what he can become. But I'm not a huge tight end guy in the top 10. When I watched Brock Bowers, I didn't feel like I was watching a tight end. I felt like I was watching a plus size wide receiver who can line up anywhere on the field and be a quarterback's best friend. I've spoken with a bunch of wide receiver coaches over the years, and what they talk about in terms of one of the best assets a pass catcher can be is quarterback friendly. And Brock Bowers is that guy. He seems to always be in the right spot, runs good, crisp routes, has plus athletic ability, above average speed, kind of looks like a more athletic Greg Olsen to me. I mean, I don't know if that's going to be a comp that holds. Olsen was a little bit taller, a little bit thicker, but this guy's going to be like a 10-year productive pro who I think is going to, I had some Bears fans on Twitter today saying, like, why would you already have Cole Kmet. Like, why would you draft a backup in the first round? He's going to be a backup to Cole Kmet. They're going to be on the field all the time together. Brock Bowers, if he's drafted at number 9, would be the Bears' number 2 receiver behind DJ Moore. So have you had a chance to watch Brock Bowers? And what do you think? What would your feedback be, or your grade, your post-draft grade, like we all love to write and talk about? If the Bears drafted him at number 9, what would your reaction be?
Yeah, I think he's a top 10 talent for sure. And I agree with you that he can be a difference maker in a lot of different ways, and that it's not even worth thinking about him as a tight end. I mean, he plays tight end and will line up in line sometimes, but he's not like you say, he's not taking number 2 to Cole Kmet on the depth chart. Like, those guys are not, essentially, they're not really at the same position on the depth chart. Like, he more or less slots in as a wide receiver who can also line up in line and block, as opposed to a tight end who can also line up at wide receiver. And so you're more or less putting him in the same scale with Neighbors and Odunze and the other wide receivers in this draft class. And so I wouldn't be upset with it by any means. I mean, I think he's a guy that certainly with a creative enough play caller, and I think Shane Waldron has shown that level of creativity. He hasn't had a player like Bowers, but he's shown, formational creativity to use players in different ways. Like, I think you can squeeze a lot out of him. And I think, Kyle Pitts' lack of production in Atlanta, I feel like sours people on this a little bit. And I agree that, like, they're different players, but also that Kyle Pitts wasn't used properly in Atlanta. And so, like, yeah, if you don't use Brock Bowers properly either, then he's not going to be productive. Like, that's, how the player is used in the offensive system matters a lot. And that's, certainly I would want to make sure my offensive coordinator, in this case, Shane Waldron, has a vision for what Bowers looks like. But assuming you get sort of the thumbs up all around, I wouldn't be disappointed with him at all as a top 10 pick and a number 9 overall pick there. The one thing I come back to, and if we're putting Brock Bowers in the same conversation as Odunze and Neighbors, just as a pass catcher, with the number 9th overall pick, I was looking at the top 10 players in receiving this past season. One of them was a first round pick. The other 9 were all drafted outside of the first round. That first round pick was CD Lamb. Everyone else, and that doesn't include the tight ends. And I know you look at the top 10 tight ends, you got like Hawkinson was a top tight end. Evan Ingram I think was a first round pick. Trying to think, Joku was a second round pick, but Dalton Kincaid, Trey McBride, like there have been first round tight ends that have been successful, and that's a worthwhile position to invest in. Like, again, I wouldn't be mad at taking him there, but I feel like in the top 10, if I can get if you look at top 10 edge rushers and sacks, like 6 out of the top 10 were first round picks. Like, you got to get premium edge rushers in the first round, and you can get good tight ends and good wide receivers, not elite, but good players at those positions later in the draft more easily than you can get a good pass rusher. Whereas the chat said, Brett Kimball said, a left tackle like Joe Alt, it's harder to find the elite level left tackles later in the draft, but you can find wide receivers and tight ends that end up being the best player in their draft class in the 2nd, 3rd, and 4th and 5th rounds almost every year. And yes, I think these are all great players, and I wouldn't be mad at them at 9, but I'm trying to evaluate like the best use of my draft pick. I feel like trading down or maybe an edge rusher is a little bit more of like where I need to focus my efforts if I'm going best player available.
I think the wide receiver narrative is accurate, but changing. I think the wide receiver position used to be that 2nd round AJ Brown sweet spot. But over the years, the influx of the pure volume of first round wide receivers. Remember that stat you cited, Justin Jefferson was banged up. Jamar Chase was banged up last year. You had a bunch of the usual suspects that are in the first, top of the stat rankings didn't really play a full season. So that could be a little bit skewed. And I just also think now NFL teams are viewing wide receiver as such a premium position, such an expensive position in that second contract, that you want that 5th-year option for the wide receiver. You want to be able to have a guy that you have that extra year of control on before you have to pay him $20+ million a year. It's almost becoming the next most expensive position outside of quarterback. We're not far away from that reality. And I don't know if the guys that normally would slide to round 2 are going to be there. Maybe in 2024, maybe in 2025. Yes, they will be. But that narrative is changing. What isn't changing is what Brett talked about, which is left tackle. And this is a really interesting point.
Can I push back on that real quick? I know we're going a little long here, but I just look at like this past year's wide receiver draft class, right? Jackson Smith and Jigba, Jackson Smith and Jigba, Quentin Johnson, Zay Flowers, Jordan Addison. Okay, a couple of guys there. The year before that, it's Drake London has been a little bit of a disappointment. Garrett Wilson in New York has been good, but not uber productive. Chris Olave, good, but not uber productive. Jamison Williams, good, but not uber productive. Jahan Dotson, Treylon Burks, like these are all like good players, but it's not like
I'm going to cut you off right here, Lauren. These are all dudes. If you put them anywhere that has a pulse at quarterback, you put Chris Olave anywhere but New Orleans, that dude's going to be balling. Treylon Burks, who's been throwing him the ball since he came into the league, and he's been banged up. Look, here's the point, right? Quarterback is receiver is a very dependent position. Receiver is probably the most team dependent, player relationship dependent position on the field. You cannot succeed if you have, I don't know, old Ryan Tannehill or Derek Carr or some of these guys throwing the ball to you. You're not going to make the kind of impact that Jamar Chase can make with Joe Burrow, or that Justin Jefferson can make with Kirk Cousins, or that AJ Brown can make with Jalen Hurts.
But Michael Pittman has 1,100 yards with Gardner Minshew this season as a 2nd round pick. You know what I mean? Like, you can find these guys and have less than elite quarterback play. And
Michael Pittman finished what? His 4th year, right? He's going to be a free agent this year. Michael Pittman now in the 2024 NFL draft will be a 1st round pick. Michael Pittman in 2020 was not a 1st round pick. 2024, he would be a 1st round pick.
He was a 1,000-yard receiver in his 2nd year too. I mean, with who was even his quarterback in 2021? Was it aging Matt Ryan, or was it?
Listen, what we're seeing here, Bears fans, is that Lauren Cox does not prioritize offense. He does not prioritize exciting football. He does not want you to have fun when you go to games on Sundays and watching wide receivers making big plays from Caleb Williams. We get it. He wants to turn back the clock and have Kendall Wright catching passes from Caleb Williams.
Hey, if Caleb Williams is so great, he can do it just like Patrick Mahomes did.
Lauren, this has been a blast, man. Like Frank said earlier, I hope you can come back soon. We got a lot to talk about. Free aid, this NFL Combine's coming up. There's going to be a lot of news coming from the NFL Combine. That's when kind of all the rumors start really breaking out. There's going to be a lot of the huge free agency big boards are going to be coming out. Everybody's going to be publishing those. You go to bearstalk.com. We're going to have our rankings of the top free agents the Chicago Bears should target over the next couple of weeks. And then obviously March 13th, the legal tampering period kicks off. It's like less than a month away that we're going to know who the next wave of veteran big ticket items. Last year, it was Tremaine Edmonds. It was TJ Edwards. It was Nate Davis was a big signing. And, those players, for better or worse, some of them made an impact. Maybe some were a little underwhelming, but I got a feeling, man, we're going to have a couple more big fish caught by Ryan Poles this year. He's got too much money. He's got to spend it. Lauren, where can all these wonderful Bears fans who love you so much and want you back, where can they listen to you every single day?
Yeah, you can hear me hating on wide receivers, apparently, 5 days a week on the Locked On Bears podcast. You can find it on YouTube and all of your favorite podcast platforms. You can also follow me on X or Twitter at Cox Sports 1. I always say it's like Fox Sports 1, but with a C.
Lauren, you are the best, and I will certainly be bombarding you with direct messages on Twitter to come back. You have a great night, my friend.
Thank you.
Bears fans, that's going to do it for us here on another Thursday night live edition of Bears Talk. I want to just say a thank you to all of you who were active in the chat tonight. You make this show so much fun to host and participate in. You super chatters out there, we really appreciate that. It helps us grow the brand, grow the show, grow the site. We can't thank you enough. We'll be back next Thursday with another live episode of Bears Talk. In the meantime, make sure you go to bearstalk.com. Follow us on Twitter at The Bears Talk. Follow me at Brian Perez NFL. If you want to subscribe to a premium membership at Bears Talk, all the information's there. It's like just a couple bucks a month, a couple dollars a month. Every little bit helps the site grow. Bears fans, it's going to be an exciting couple of weeks. The Combine, free agency, and then, of course, the mecca of all Chicago Bears offseason events, the 2024 NFL Draft is coming. Until then, thanks for watching, and bear down.